Hello everybody, my name is Leon and I'm one of the co-founders of Abundantia, and I'm very excited to be taking you through this short video. I'm going to be talking in more detail about the 4 keys in becoming a completely free citizen. Now, together with my partner and fiance Sorella Moore, who you may have found on the Sorella Moore Finance channel, we believe it's our mission to bring as much freedom to as many people on the planet as possible. Freedom of the kind that we achieved both in our own lives at quite an early age. Now, in case you didn't know, Sorel became a self-made multimillionaire a few years ago, and I became a self-made millionaire in my early 20s when I was 23. So this thing about freedom that starts with financial freedom, but is only one of the 4 keys to total freedom, is something that we believe everyone should be able to achieve. And hopefully with our help through the videos that we post to Abundantia and the newsletters you're going to be starting to receive now, this is something that we really want to help you how to do yourself. But it is only one out of the 4 keys to becoming truly free. Now, when I talk about freedom, you may think that if you're born in a country anywhere in the West or anywhere in the so-called developed world, that you probably think you already have freedom. You might be thinking, what's this crazy guy talking about? I live in somewhere like Germany or Canada or Australia. I'm free. I can kind of do whatever I want. Well, let me ask you, how free do you feel? How true actually is the statement that you are free? Now, I'm not going to go down any crazy conspiracy theory holes or anything like that, but I want to talk about the fact that we are all born into a country that has its very own specific set of rules and regulations, a country that has rules for things like taxation and for doing business and for how fast you can drive on the road and whether or not raw milk can be sold and everything in between. You are born into a country that has its own specific currency, that has its own language, that has its own cities, that has its own borders, that has its own places that you can travel around the world without a visa. And all of these rules mean that you are locked into a certain ecosystem. If you never try and escape that ecosystem, whether it's via your earning ability, whether it's via multiple passports or residencies or companies, you are locked into the ecosystem of the country that you are born in. Now, does that sound like real freedom? The way that I think about it is like this. Being born into the country that you were born into and only abiding by the rules and regulations of that country or sticking by the rules and regulations of that country is like living in a city with about 200 different restaurants. And that's kind of the metaphor that I use, because the planet that we live on today, there are around 200 countries on our planet. Now, it's like living in a city, you choosing to abide by only the rules and regulations, or you choosing to live in only the ecosystem of the country that you were born in, is like living in a city with 200 varied restaurants with different flavors and tastes and cuisines and all of this kind of stuff, exciting, exotic things. But you decide to eat at only one of those restaurants for the rest of your life. Now, does that sound like freedom? Does that sound like freedom of choice or freedom of experience? I'm sure you can all agree, no matter where you live in the world, that does not sound like freedom. However, this is the way that the vast majority of people on our planet live today. They are born in a certain country, they live by the rules of that country, they live by the business ecosystem of that country, and they die in that country. They may go for some travels around the world, they may go on some trips, they may, buy some things from another country online at a certain point, but for the most part of their lives, they live within the ecosystem of their country. Instead of having 200 restaurants to choose from and picking the best parts from each of those restaurants, the business laws from this country, the taxation rules from this country, the ways to invest from this country, the banking from this country, and so on, they stick within the ecosystem of their own country. Now, with the globalized planet that we live in, the interconnected planet that we live in today, this is not something that we have to choose. We all have the ability to acquire these 4 keys of freedom. The silver key, which is the independent earning key. The topaz key, which is the key of becoming a global citizen, which is acquiring multiple citizenships and residencies. The tungsten key, which is setting up global structures like offshore banking and companies and intelligent tax structures that enable you to both protect your wealth and to pay low tax. And number 4, the gold key, the key which enables you to grow your wealth with smart investments around the world and to protect yourself from any future eventuality. These 4 keys can be acquired by choosing the best of what's available from all of the countries on the planet. And that's what I'm going to take you through in this short video to give you an overview about what we're going to be teaching you over the next few weeks and months and years, hopefully, as we expand Abundantia's content. So let's talk about the first key, the silver key, which is the independent earning key. Now, when I was young, I developed a lot of trauma around money. And this was simply because I was raised by a single mother who had no money. And when I mean no money, I mean no money. Sure, I was born and grew up in a lucky country, Australia. Some may say is not so lucky anymore with all of the crazy restrictions that are happening there right now. But Australia is a relatively lucky country. And my mother was so poor that she would take bouillon cubes, like chicken stock cubes, and put them in hot water and tell my brother and I that that was soup. We grew up extremely poor, and I think I developed a lot of trauma around money because of my youthful experiences around money. Now, what that resulted in me as I got into my early 20s is that I realized that I never ever wanted to struggle for money again. I saw the stress that it caused my mother, I saw the pain that it caused people, and I decided that I never wanted to be in that situation ever again. Now, I never set out to become a multimillionaire. I never set out to have 4 companies around the world. However, my goal was just this. I wanted to know that whenever I put an ATM card in a machine, whatever number I pressed, whether that was $50 or $200 or $500 or $1,000, I always wanted to know that that amount of money would always come out. I never had to check a bank statement. I never had to worry about how much money was in my account. That's what I wanted. I never had the desire to own a Lamborghini, and nor do I still. I just wanted to know that I was financially secure. And the way that I did that is by generating an independent income online. After setting up my first business at the age of 23, I became a self-made millionaire within 9 months by selling products online. And this is the way that Sorel and I not recommend, but we believe wholeheartedly in selling digital products online using your knowledge and experience to create an independent income. Now, the great thing about having your own business and generating your own income is that you get to work on your own terms. But not all businesses that you can create are created equal. For example, let's say that you are a plumber and you have your own plumbing business in whatever city that you live in. That can be great, and you have a certain level of freedom to create your own income. However, you're still tied down to the city that you live in. You're tied down to clients in that city. You can't live and work from anywhere in the world. So in our opinion, when it comes to true freedom, when it comes to acquiring the silver key of freedom, the way to do it is by generating an independent income online. Ideally, generating an independent income online that works for you while you sleep. That maybe you have to put in a few hours a week or maybe a day or 2 a week to maintain this business, but a business that doesn't take all of your time. And this is one of the big things that Sorel and I are going to be teaching you via Abundantia. Now, the unfortunate thing is until you acquire this key, until you acquire the silver key of independent income, it becomes very difficult to acquire the other keys. Simply because in order to decide, well, yes, I want to go after the topaz key. I want to get multiple citizenships and residencies around the world. If you're stuck to the city that you live in and earning an income only in that city, it becomes very difficult to go and live and work in other cities around the world or to try and get residencies or passports somewhere else, because in some cases, you'll have to spend some time in those places. So you really need to generate an independent income first. Now, while this may sound like a scary thing, and while I'm earning much more now than when I first set out to generate an independent income, trust me when I say you probably need to earn less than you think to be able to start acquiring the other keys. And you probably need to earn less than you think with an independent income to really feel completely free. Now, for me, once I started earning $4,000 a month online, which is only about $1,000 a week, I felt more free at that point than at any other time in my life. And simply because it was at that point that I was able to start making better choices for myself. I was able to also start to think different thoughts that were never available to me at the time before. I started thinking things like, well, where should I go and live? Where in the world should I go and live? There are so many places on earth that I can live using this independent income of only $1,000 a week, and I can live like a king in certain places. And that's kind of what I did. The first place that I lived abroad was Singapore for a very short period of time, and then I moved to Malaysia for a year and a half. And on $1,000 a week, it's very easy to live in a place like that and experience another culture. And it was a beautiful experience for me at the age of 24. So when it comes to generating an independent income, you probably need to earn much less than you think to really start feeling free. But 2, the level of freedom that it opens up in your mind to start making better choices for your life, to choose where you want to live, to choose what time you want to start investing into your business to grow it. You start thinking things like, well, if I want to double my income, if I was working a 9-to-5 job, maybe I'd have to work 10 years in that position before I'd get enough pay rises or enough increases to better positions in that company to double my income. But maybe if you're growing a business, an independent business, to go from $4,000 a month to $8,000 a month, that may only take you a month. And it's very possible when generating an independent income. Now, for Sorel and I, we're both earning considerably more than that these days. And the great thing is the vast majority of our companies run when we're even not working. But what we're going to try and do over the next few months, as you learn more and more about Abundantia from our blog posts, from the newsletters, and from our Sorel and More Finance channel, is how to generate an independent income quickly, and also how to achieve that level of freedom that starts opening up your brain to more free thoughts and more possibilities. And we're going to try and teach you how to do that as soon as possible. Now, let's talk about the second key, the Topaz key, which is the key that enables you to unlock the ability to become a global citizen. Now, global citizenship, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing that many people never think about when it comes to becoming truly free on a global scale. Now, what the last year and a half, 2 years of COVID have taught us is that many of us, unless you have multiple passports or citizenships and the ability to travel freely between multiple countries, many of us are not as free as we initially thought. Now, let me give you the example of my home country of Australia. Now, during the COVID pandemic, Australia locked its borders. But unlike what many other countries did, that just locked their borders to stop other people coming to that country, Australia locked its borders and locked its own citizens in the country. Australian citizens, despite the fact that it was, again, against many international human rights conventions against free travel, Australia said to its own citizens, no, you can't leave. Doesn't matter that you've never committed a crime. You cannot leave your country freely. And in some cases, Australia even suggested that Australia's citizens could not re-enter their own country, which is crazy. Now, in many cases, Australians were stuck in Australia. They could not leave. But the one situation where Australians were allowed to leave the country is if they were a citizen of 2 countries or more. Now, the thing is, the Australian government could very well say to Australians, you can't leave, you can't get out of the country. But what they could not legally do is they could not legally stop Australian citizens that also had another passport from leaving, simply because under international law, they could not stop the citizen of another country from leaving Australia. Now, they did try at the start. There were some cases with German citizens and Greek citizens that were also dual citizens of Australia that tried to leave, and the Australian government said no. But all those people did is very quickly petition to their home countries, to their embassies of their other country. And very quickly, the German government was the first to react and said to Australia, you cannot stop our citizens from leaving your country. This is illegal. And very quickly, Australia relented and let these citizens leave. Now, if you only had an Australian passport or are in a similar situation of many other countries around the world, you were stuck. You were stuck in your home country. But this was not the case if you had multiple passports. Now, right now, I'm working on my 4th passport. So very soon, likely by the middle of next year, I will have 4 passports. Now, this is in terms of global freedom, something that cannot be overstated. It is worth more money than you could ever throw at it. The ability to know that if you're ever in a sticky situation in another country, that you don't only have one country to call upon, but you have 2 or 3 or 4 countries to call upon that can help you with diplomatic assistance. Or in the situation, let's say, for example, the country that you were born in, you don't agree with that country's laws anymore. You don't agree with the new politicians that are taking your country in a scary direction. You don't agree with the fact that your country is going to war with other countries and your tax dollars are going towards that. You don't agree with the fact of what your country is doing in terms of economic decisions or taxation or anything like that. If you're only born with one passport, you are stuck. You have no other choices. However, if you can attain multiple citizenships or even multiple residencies or permanent residencies in other countries, you immediately have a level of freedom that most other human beings on earth will never ever achieve. It doesn't matter what economic situation happens in your country or what situation of war or famine or hardship or political unrest or you just not feeling like a part of that country anymore. You immediately have other options with another passport. This can open you up to many opportunities, travel opportunities, the ability to live in more places around the world, to have visa-free access to more countries around the world, to have better banking and taxation and business opportunities. The possibilities are endless. And obviously, the more passports that you have, the more possibilities that you can have. Now, despite getting another passport may sound like a tricky thing to do, it may sound like a crazy thing to do, it may sound like there's a lot of paperwork, and in some cases there can be. But in many cases, you can acquire a new passport in as little as 2 months, which is something that we're going to be sharing with you over the duration of you learning through Abundantia. So this is something that we're very excited to share with you. And also when it comes to residencies in multiple countries around the world, we're also going to take you down that path, because in many cases, getting a residency in another country gives you almost all the benefits of another passport, but it's much, much easier to acquire. Now that takes me on to the third part, the third key of becoming a completely free citizen, and that is the tungsten key, and that is all about structures. Now, in case you don't know, tungsten is one of the toughest metals in the world, and I believe that having a key called the tungsten key really illustrates what this section of becoming a free human being is all about, and this is all about structures. Now, structures are the things that when you think of a structure, what is a structure? It's something that, for example, a building is built on. You think of a high-rise building, it may be made of glass mostly, but underneath it is a metal structure, usually made of steel, but we want to go one better than that and call it tungsten, because tungsten is such a tougher metal than steel. Now, a structure is the way that you legally build your life. It is, for example, the way that instead of you getting paid as a solo entrepreneur via your clients, you instead get paid by a company or get paid into a company that you own that is better for tax. So look at it this way. Let's take my example living here in Iceland. Now, if I was a solo entrepreneur in Iceland and I was making $100,000 a year, my tax rate here in Iceland would be 47%. How instead of running as a solo entrepreneur, I set up an Icelandic company to run all my business through. I'm still one person, I'm still a one-person operation, but immediately my tax rate goes down from 47% to 20% just by setting up that simple structure. Now you can go one better. Instead of that, you could set up a company offshore in a jurisdiction like the UK or Hong Kong or Malta, where your tax rate could be as low as 5% or even 0%. You still run your online business from anywhere in the world. It's just that your business is no longer where you are. Your business is now technically and legally in another country that gives you a better tax rate. So this is one part of structures. When it comes to earning your income, the way that you structure the way that that income is earned and then flows to you can give you so many benefits in terms of taxation, in terms of earning ability, in terms of business opportunities, in terms of where you choose to bank and hold your investments. Now, one part of structures as well is about having structures that enable you to legally lower your taxable income. And this is something that most people set out to get a great structure to do, to legally lower their taxable income. Now, in many cases, a lot of people think that legally lowering your tax or lowering your tax at all is unethical or illegal or anything like that. Now, there are two parts to lowering your tax. One is tax avoidance or tax evasion, which is definitely illegal. If you're doing something dodgy or something sneaky to hide your money somewhere so your government doesn't see it, that is illegal. However, there is a way of structuring your taxable income, structuring yourself, your business and your assets and your investments that is legal, that will enable you to legally lower your tax, just like the biggest companies on the planet do, and take your legal taxable income somewhere from, let's say you live in Australia and you may be paying 45% tax. It's possible to legally lower your taxable income down to maybe 5% or 1% or even 0% in certain cases. And that's what the tungsten key will enable you to do. We're going to teach you how to set up structures around the world like trusts or limited liability partnerships or limited partnerships or companies in jurisdictions like Malta that will enable you to pay 5% corporate tax instead of 20% or 25 or 30% depending on where in the world that you live. But first, you will need to sort out the silver key, the key that enables you to earn independent income before you can start looking at this key. This is another huge part of a free human strategy. Now let's talk about the last key, the gold key. Now, you may have thought that the gold key was the key that we talked about when it comes to earning an independent income, because gold is tantamount to wealth. When you think about wealth, you think about gold. But for us, that is silver. That is earning an income. But when you want gold, the golden key, that is the fourth part, which is learning to invest and protect your wealth. Now, the way that you do this is in many regards. It's by intelligently putting your wealth in places around the world where it is more likely to be safe and secure, but also more likely to grow, to protect that wealth and that income for your future safety and security. To strategize, to have your wealth sitting in not only one country or one bank account around the world, but multiple, 2, 3, or 5. Because, for example, if one country's economy collapses or one currency that you have all of your wealth stored in collapses or is devalued, then you haven't lost everything that you've worked for. Now, let me give you a great example of this. Let's say, like a few years ago, you had all of your money in Cyprus. You are a citizen of Cyprus and you had worked your entire life. You had $250,000 saved up for your retirement, and it was all sitting in one of the biggest Cypriot banks. Now, you woke up in 2013 to find out that because of an economic catastrophe, your government had seized all of the money in every bank account of every Cypriot, or most of the Cypriots. Anything over 100,000 US dollars was now seized to put back in the country's economy. More than half of everything that you've worked your whole life to earn was now seized by the government and gone. And this is the thing that can happen to you, and that has happened in many situations around the world if you hold all of your money in one certain place, or if you don't know where to effectively invest your money to spread it out for safety and security. Now, you may be thinking that your money is in a place like Australia or the United States or Canada, and you think, well, their economies are safe. Not so. In places like the United States, that the vast majority of the money on the planet is linked to, the America has printed more money over the last year and a half during the COVID crisis than it has in the entire history of the country, seriously devaluing or potentially devaluing the American dollar, which many people believe is leading towards a collapse. This is just one situation of what we are potentially leading into when it comes to the safety and security of our money around the world. Now, we're going to teach you things like how to invest in cryptocurrency, how to invest in gold and silver, how to put your money in certain bank accounts or investments around the world that will be earning you potentially 10% interest per annum or more, instead of the measly 0.5% or 1% interest that you may be earning in your current country of residence or citizenship. These are, again, the 4 keys to becoming a completely free human. The silver key, learning how to earn an independent income. The topaz key, learning how to become a global citizen with multiple citizenships and residencies around the world. The tungsten key, which is setting up intelligent structures to protect what you've earned, to legally pay less tax, and to open yourself up for better business opportunities. And finally, the gold key, the key that's all about investing and protecting your wealth in places around the world and diversifying your wealth and your earning and your interest for your future safety and security, no matter what happens on a global scale. I hope this has given you some insight into what we're going to be teaching you through Abundantia, and I hope it's gotten you excited to the possibilities of what you're about to learn to truly become a free human. And remember, there are 200 restaurants, 200 exciting, exotic restaurants for you to take part in around the world, for you to pick and choose the things that you love about these restaurants. And these restaurants are just countries. You may want to live in one country but bank in another. You may want to live in Malta but have your company set up in the United Kingdom. You may want to live in Singapore but hold your investments in Australia or Hong Kong or anywhere in between. This is what we're going to teach you to become a completely free human. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope this gives you more insight in what we believe it means to become a free human and the philosophy behind Abundantia. So now that you know about this, ask yourself the question again: how free do you feel? Knowing what you know now, how free do you truly feel? Well, think about that for a moment and then step on into a world of new possibilities as we take you down a path of becoming truly a free human.